Woman who vanished 40 years ago reappears. Explosions, gunpowder, mass chaos, these were the sounds, smells, and sights of war-torn Vietnam. When Saigon fell in 1975, the ensuing pandemonium left relationships in tatters and broke families apart. People did whatever they had to do in order to escape the fallen city, even if it meant leaving their own loved ones behind.
Before we begin, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell for more amazing videos.
But one thing connects us all, even if we're thousands of miles apart, and that's DNA. Two women from different parts of the US seemingly had nothing in common, until a freak coincidence brought them right back to the family, war, and chaos they thought had been buried in the past. Vietnamese children born in the 60s and 70s understood fear the same way they understood things like hunger and thirst. It was an inevitability. From their first days in Saigon, Bernie and Rose knew this all too well. We would always hear the beating of helicopters, and we could hear the sirens and even the smell of war around us, Bernie recalled. She was just 4 years old at the time, but she's never been able to shake those memories of her brief childhood in Vietnam. Along with the helicopters was another memory, her family. Bernie and Rose's mother was South Vietnamese and their father was an American GI. This meant the mother and daughters were left to navigate war-torn Saigon alone, even the devastating aftermath. There were a lot of rumors that Vietnamese women with Amerasian babies would be tortured, Bernie explained. Luckily, the trio were offered a once-in-a-lifetime chance to be airlifted out of Saigon before it fell. After years of fear, they were able to relax. But their relaxation didn't last for long. Mere hours before they were set to escape Saigon, Bernie and Rose were playing in their apartment's courtyard when Bernie realized something horrifying: Rose had disappeared. Bernie, who was a toddler herself, her aunt, and her mother searched desperately for little Rose, but she was nowhere to be found. The hours ticked by, but despite the dogged search for the 2-year-old, they came up empty-handed and late for their flight. Bernie's mother was adamant that they stick together, but as it became more and more clear that Rose was gone, she was forced to make an agonizing decision: stay in Saigon and look for Rose, or escape the dangerous city with Bernie? It's a choice no parent should ever have to make, but there she was, forced to choose between her two daughters, the 2-year-old she couldn't find, and the 4-year-old she had with her. With this in mind, she came to an impossible decision. She and Bernie found themselves on a plane bound for the United States. As they looked out the windows at the smoldering remains of Saigon, they did so knowing they'd never see Rose ever again. They had to move on with their lives. I could never understand it entirely, Bernie said of her mother's decision. My mother never spoke of it. After all, Bernie's mother had her hands full. Once in the US, she reunited with her husband, had 3 more kids, and relocated to Colorado. Now the oldest of 3 or 4 siblings, Bernie set her sights on crafting an impressive future for herself. She had big dreams, so big that her childhood in Vietnam seemed small in comparison. She almost forgot about those first 4 years entirely. Almost. The older she got, the more she thought about her mysterious little sister. She and her mother felt guilty for leaving her all alone in Saigon, at the mercy of unknown threats and dangers. Bernie even visited Vietnam in hopes of finding Rose, but to no avail. Still, she held out hope, and even brought her situation to the attention of thousands of people online. Out of thousands, she hoped, someone just had to have some kind of information about Rose. But months went by before Bernie heard a fateful ping from her computer. The email, from a woman named Vanessa Pham, brought her closer to her long-lost sister than Bernie ever thought possible. The story Vanessa told made Bernie's hair stand on end. She had something far more valuable than a distant connection to Rose. She had her own story, and it too hailed from war-torn Vietnam circa 1975. Vanessa's mother had worked at a police station, and Vanessa grew up alongside a handful of siblings, but despite this normal life, something always felt off. It just grew more suspicious, Vanessa said of her childhood. She didn't look like her parents, for starters, and her siblings always treated her like she was different. It took over 30 years for Vanessa's then elderly mom to tell her the truth. Vanessa was adopted. Instead of feeling betrayed, she felt relieved. Finally, the displacement she felt as a kid made sense. But along with the truth came a difficult question: who was she, then? It seemed impossible to answer. That is, until she signed up for a DNA ancestry website. She was astounded to find hundreds of DNA relatives, but there was one connection that truly took her breath away. Underneath the name of one of her distant relatives was the phrase, first cousin. She emailed him and told him her story, and to her surprise, he welcomed her with open arms, and even offered to connect her with members of her own family. Vanessa held out hope of connecting with one person in particular. "I need to go find my mom," Vanessa knew. "She might be looking for me." She had no idea where to start her search, but a shocking message from her newfound cousin made her all the more determined to find her long-lost family. He told her that her biological family was right in Colorado, just a couple states away from where she was living in California. Then her cousin dropped the biggest bomb of all: she had 4 adult siblings, and one of them had also been born in Vietnam. This sibling was, of course, Bernie, who sat in awe of the message she'd received from the not-so-strange woman, Vanessa. She wasn't Vanessa, she was Rose. The two sisters agreed to meet in Colorado, nearly 44 years after being separated. The moment they saw each other in the airport was like two lines finally intersecting. They were together at last. Family and friends watched on as the two hugged for the first time in decades. The sisters spent the next few days getting to know each other again. Vanessa learned her birth name and finally met her 3 half-siblings and their families. After being alone for so long, she was finally home, but the person she most wanted to see, besides Bernie, was nowhere to be found. Bernie tearfully told Vanessa the truth: their mother had died nearly 6 years before. It felt like 1,000 heavy weights, Vanessa described. Still, they were connected by more than just their mother. They shared DNA, and both knew that their bond was strong enough to withstand anything. "I have been walking and wandering for 43 years, and I found my way home," Vanessa told Bernie. For other long-lost siblings, reuniting can be the goal of a lifetime. Please share this with your friends and family.